Hello, donks. It is Thursday. I get this show started in the right way. It is Thursday, December 20th.
Not happy holidays. Not
2018, and this is the MMA Beat. My name is Luke Thomas. I'm the host of this program. I'm from SiriusXM as well as MMAFighting.com. And we have well, I don't want to say a threesome because that would be terrible, but we have a three-person panel today, and it's a combo I don't think we've ever done before. Danny Segura is in Miami, being very Colombian, and so we're going to be up here in the freezing New York City weather, getting this job done. To my left, this is from CBS Sports, Brian Campbell, and at the end of the row, it is Iceman Mendenhall, the man in the hat, Chuck Mendenhall from The Ringer, as well as MMAFighting.com. Boaz?
I didn't know it was a Christmas holiday sweater.
That's right.
Like
it.
Wonder why Christmas missed us. Birthdays were the worst days. Now we ship champagne when we're Thursdays. All right. Here we are, boys. Now, this is the last of these shows in studio for the year. I think we'll have one more on the road next week. But for this particular office that we have, this will be the last one this year. So I don't want to prematurely thank you guys for watching, although obviously it's thank you for watching. But we are winding things down here in 2018. Speaking of which, let's get right into it. There's so much to talk about. Let's start with this one. In fact, it dropped, I guess, the middle of the night last night. I woke up this morning and I saw on Twitter on my phone, Jon Jones. He's competing, of course, at UFC 232, which we'll talk about in just a second, but tweeting one Daniel Cormier saying, I didn't quite understand the tweet either, because he was like, you're only the champ sort of by accident, not a real one. Connor's the real one. I follow that. And then he's like, agree to fight me and I'll give $100,000 to charities in San Diego. Why San Diego? That's the only one part I didn't get. Like, of all places
that's
to, like...
that's
like, why not Albuquerque or, I don't know, Atlanta or something?
Or that pregnant lady at the intersection, yeah.
All right, well...
Too soon?
Yeah, I mean, someone's just going to run up and punch me and you in the face at this point. Okay, but let's get to the tweet itself. What did you make of it? Obviously, he's taunting him, but this is a guy who, a month or two ago, both of them were saying, kind of moved on from it. Apparently, he has not.
I didn't take it as a taunt. I took it as he wants the damn fight. I took it as DC's strategy of acting like, no, I don't think I need that for my legacy. Jones doesn't deserve it. I plan on retiring anyway, which really says I'm going to step back and get the biggest offer possible to cash this thing in on the way out. I feel like DC's winning that battle because now Jones is looking at the landscape and saying, okay, I'm going to fight Gus. I'm favored heavily to win him. I got to get that DC third fight. I got to get that giant payday. I got to maybe use that to close off the negativity that Jones has acquired naturally from the failed drug test and all the episodes going on that. Even though he owns 2 wins over DC, in a weird way, DC got an upper hand by keeping the title, Jones getting stripped, and then DC winning the heavyweight championship, which was the only way, legacy-wise, resume-wise, he could get to the Pantheon without beating Jones, right? It was the only way to go around the corner and skip it. I think Jones is now saying, no, don't go away. I want that fight. That felt like a little bit of a kneel he took. He took it out. He said, okay, let's do it.
Well, how long ago was it that Jon Jones was in New York doing his press conference? 6 weeks ago? Something like that?
Something like that,
yeah. And he's basically at this point saying he has no interest. He's basically like, hey, what would be the point of it? So I'm just glad that we've pivoted a 180 before his fight, before we get to fight week and everything, and now that fight is back in the air because I know we were talking a little bit off camera, but that's a fight that I think a lot of people would be way more compelled to see than maybe even the second time through. I feel like it's kind of matured into something else because there's so many different personal spaces that they've occupied with each other. So much bad blood. You still got Daniel Cormier masquerading in Jon Jones' mind with the belts, things like that. So I feel like I'm happy to see the one guy who has the most say in it coming around. So whatever way he's using it, I feel like it was kind of fun to see. I'm also liking this new Jon Jones. Like, I feel like he's always been a bit of a heel, but I feel like he doesn't check himself anymore. He's not deleting his tweets. He's not doing that sort of thing. So I'm kind of happy to see him having the conviction of what he wants now. You know what I mean? So it'll be fun going into fight week.
Also, people might make of it, well, why would you be tweeting another rival when you have a really critical moment of a fight coming up?
Just looking past Gustafsson again.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, I don't think that he is. To me, it's like
not.
He's so utterly confident he's going to go in there. One way to get his hand raised. That like Chael Sonnen, who is like, got all these irons in the fire, like I got the Anderson Silva iron in the fire, the Vanderlei one, whatever, so that he can pivot right away. I guess the question is, to his point, real quickly, Chuck, he thinks that DC's withdrawal from the process is really an attempt to ratchet it up.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that's could be legit. I mean, DC is a big picture mind. I think that he sees things. He sees his own landscape. You're just talking about maybe setting the table for future fights. Just
also, wasn't part of the big picture also that I don't need this guy to create a legacy?
True. But I think that...
But DC's smart enough to realize that the only thing as good as a legacy is retirement money and paying for its kids. DC's never going to forget that Gustafsson fight. Critically, one of the better fights of that calendar year. Fantastic. It didn't move any product, and he made that much money, according to him. He got a taste of real money against Stipe and then headlining at the Garden. He wants a taste of that Conor money now. So this is very smart, very calculated dude. A little thick in the robust area, but it's helping at heavyweight. I like it.
I had to throw that in. I just think that I think that he sleeps with it. I think it's one of those obsessions, and he's going to play it the way he's going to play it. But I'm like, I know DC. Haven't talked to him. You talk to any of his coaches, they basically use that word obsessed. I just can't see that.
Yeah, he's such a competitor. Like, he wants another try and another try and another try, especially when you can get paid to have.
Well, can I bring up a point here on this fight? Because if you were going to ask me, what's the one thing I want for next year? Maybe you will ask me that too. But I'm saying, what's one thing I want for fans and all of us is that third DC Jones fight, because I've already said it. It's the Ali Frazier rivalry of this sport. And the problem with that comparison is it's largely been a one-sided rivalry inside the cage. Two competitive fights, but two clear victories for Jones, drugs or not. The real rivalry in here is how they've treated each other in TV studios and in the MGM Grand entrance area. And I want to see that go into the cage. And I think the best chance to have a really competitive third fight that makes this rivalry, like puts the stamp on it, the cherry on it, is to do it at heavyweight. I mean, I don't think there's anything that DC can gain by going back to light heavyweight to do it. He just took his career from really damn good to all-time great with what he's done at heavyweight. So this could be the first time where he enters a fight with advantages against John. And if we're serious right now, John coming back has more to prove than DC does. DC's the guy who just kept plugging along each time John beat him and then got pulled away from the sport. Now, I think the bargaining's in DC's favor. I think you saw that with that tweet from John. So I say the third fight has to be at heavyweight. I think it's going to be the best fight of the three, and I think it's going to open the door for fights 4 and 5. You heard it right here.
I think that the reverse psychology thing that you're talking about is probably in play, because I do believe Daniel Cormier operates on that level a little bit. Like he thinks of, if I say this, I know I'm going to get his goat and he'll want to do this. You know what I mean? So I know originally he was, Daniel Cormier was like, I don't really want to do it at heavyweight. I'd rather go back down to light heavyweight and challenge him, and to do that again. That could all be just in the same vein, it all could be like a fishing to kind of bring him up and get that fight that way.
So then the other issue this week related to John, and the question is, how will it affect the fight in terms of how we talk about it, how the public will talk about it, how it will define how ultimately the fight is reviewed, either if he loses or if he wins. It will have implications. He declined to have VADA testing. VADA stands for the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. Name a boxer who has used it in their fights relatively recently.
Many. It's what Canelo Alvarez got popped on for tainted beef.
Yeah.
So here's the deal in boxing. Okay, USADA has a certain reputation in MMA. Before UFC signed with USADA, USADA was the one in boxing that had the really bad reputation, the one that Floyd Mayweather, in theory, could buy his way to getting things done.
Didn't Eric Morales have an issue with him as well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have had. VADA was the one that came in that didn't have sort of financial needs in certain areas to try to be corrupt. VADA's run by a former ringside doctor, Margaret Goodman. Yeah. VADA has credibility. They test for things that most tests don't.
But nothing that the USADA doesn't, to my knowledge.
VADA goes deeper with the hair test. They go deep.
Do they really?
And it's voluntary, and it's out of camp, and it's 24/7. It's all those things that in boxing, at least, USADA never was. So coming from the boxing guy point of view, I see John Jones pulling out of VADA, dead giveaway. I mean, come on, like you don't.
No, I think that's totally unfair. Let me give you the pitch here. When USADA came along, all we heard was, and forget what you have experienced in boxing, because I'm not sure they have the same arrangement, but I think they have a much, like, who was filling out whereabouts programs with USADA in boxing? I don't recall that ever happening.
Well, boxing's pretty sketchy too.
Right. So I think the program that the UFC has is significantly more thorough relative to what they experienced in boxing. But the point being is here, I remember when USADA came along, everyone, their brother told me, Daddy's home, the cops are finally out on the street, we're going to clean this sport up. And what's interesting is, like, if you believe John is a cheater, if you believe that, how do you make the argument that the organization that's caught him twice is not good enough to catch him again, other than you think that they won't carry out enough justice at that point? But one would have to think he has exhausted all possible slack in the rope. Hold on, let me finish. Okay. And then people saying, well, you're a multiple-time offender, you should be subject to more testing. If your argument is that testing is not good enough, such that more testing solves the problem, it's self-refuting logic. You're literally saying this thing that doesn't work, we need more of so that it keeps not working. Well, which is it? So this to me is like ridiculous. And the idea that they would like say, well, it was only for the two-time offenders, it wouldn't be for anybody else. If the argument is you need more testing, you can just apply it to anybody. So the issue about John, I realize that he has no credibility with certain skeptics. I get that, nor am I trying to like change your opinion necessarily. All I'm pointing out is if you make this issue about John, rather than what an athlete is or is not entitled to, what really works and what doesn't, to me it's a bit of a slippery slope. Go ahead.
I just think if you are going to sit here and watch this sport or watch boxing week to week and think that the only people that are doing drugs are the ones getting caught by USADA,
No, it's absurd,
I mean,
of
it's a
course.
joke. So then we have to believe that there are ways people are regularly beating these tests. So if you have somebody who has so little, so much to lose, like so little left to stand on in John Jones in terms of his credibility and resume all time because of the 2 drug test violations, because of the 2 excuses that allowed him to get his career back on track. There's no grace anymore. There's no anything. So you have a chance to really put away any doubters moving forward.
It wouldn't put away doubters.
Okay, but you know what? Kobe had a really bad thing happen that time in Colorado. Nobody talks about it anymore.
Why? What's your point?
He cleaned up his day-to-day life and put it behind him, owned up, put it behind him.
Insofar as you know.
Okay, but I'm saying it didn't follow him. So Jones could also, by having a second life at heavyweight and closing out his career the way we thought he originally could because of how amazing his natural talent is, if this is what it took right now to just do the VADA testing, and look, guys, I am clean. I've been clean all along.
If you want to make that argument, then just say what the argument is that USADA doesn't work. That's essentially what you're arguing. You are arguing that everybody who's like, USADA's they're gonna do it. If you argue that VADA is necessary, you must argue also USADA is trash.
Well,
so which is it?
You're going macro, I'm going micro. I believe that
These are important issues inside the sport.
Okay, I believe that the drugs and those that can afford them are still ahead of the best testing. I don't believe
Including
that
VADA's, by the way.
I don't believe that USADA is the best testing from what I've seen. And okay, who am I? I'm someone close to the sports. I'm not a doctor or anything, but from what I've seen, I've grown to trust that VADA goes a little bit further. At least that's the spiel we've been told to accept. That VADA goes a little bit deeper. So if you're John and you're trying to remove any doubt whatsoever, and somebody in court recommended that you should go to VADA, wouldn't you at least do it one time? Go through with it, prove to everybody, look, guys, I passed the VADA too. Get off my back. I'm clean. To now pull out mid-process.
Yeah.
Well, the bells are ringing in your head right now.
It's real surprising, I guess, that he declined it. You were like immediately like, you should decline that. Why would you do this? It's not surprising that it did when he's on publicly, a couple weeks ago saying like, I still drink. I still do I still smoke some pot here and there. It's a completely... I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I tend to agree with you. I'm like, there's already an arbiter in place that's checking this and keeps catching him. I mean, he just has to fight and he has to come away from it clean at this point, don't you think? And then it starts to abate. I think that's in your Kobe sense. I feel like that's kind of what he did. Time just starts to take away all that stuff at some point. I think he just has to keep his nose clean. Pardon the pun, but I think he has to do that. If he does that, people will start to go back to the way they want to view him. And this is just, I know that we've talked about this a lot. This is probably the most scrutiny he'll ever be under is right now. Is this going into this fight right this second? So
and I'm not
he
saying
needs to get through this.
I'm not saying he has to do VADA.
No.
Right? There's no rule. So
You're saying it's an opportunity.
I'm saying it's an opportunity, even to just do it once and never again to say, look, guys.
Here's my basic view on this. It's like if there was just a commission testing and he'd had the same, roughly the same issues where he got caught twice or something, and people didn't trust the commission, and then you went and said, I'll do the voluntary anti-doping association, which many boxers do. I think that I would have no issue with that. But to force on all the athletes this worldwide testing system, which apparently now doesn't work, but nevertheless encumbers their life absurdly and can cause all kinds of problems, which we've seen with people who had false positives or certainly extenuating circumstances at a bare minimum, to then say, on top of that, you now need another one. It's not about John Jones. It is about what is an athlete entitled to in terms of their rights and their privacy. You want to force that on them? You don't get to ask for the other one. Make a choice. That is my argument. All right. Now, that being said, it is part of the storyline. Here we are talking about it. How is it going to affect the fight, win or loss? Give me. How is this all? Not so much VADA per se, but VADA's now part of this big story How's it all going to go?
I think success puts away a lot of bad stories.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look about when Jones entered UFC 214 in the Cormier rematch, coming off of the failed test at 200, it's really like Groundhog's Day with the same feeling of he's going to have to prove that he's the new man and all that he didn't use it. And guess what he did? He put forth a spectacular performance. And that night, myself, probably you guys as well, wrote the same column that, you know what?
He's back.
He really is the greatest of all time, and he's back.
He's back.
And this was the one thing he could do. The best thing you can do to fix your reputation is just come back out and be spectacular and be dominant. Obviously, a week later, 2 weeks later, it all went downhill again with another failed test. But man, we have short memories. We just almost want people to
Especially in the sport. I really believe that. And especially the way the news cycle works now. You know how it is. Something always intercepts the last piece of news, and current news becomes old news fairly fast. I just honestly believe he just has to get through this fight and look good. And I think people will start to return to the way they want to feel about him rather than the way they've been made to from his suspensions and everything they've had to go through. I really believe they get back to that a little bit.
You know what I learned from 214? That he gets a pass because he's not just really good, not just really great, he's all-time great. I mean, he's a historic all-time, probably the best I've ever seen at the sport, that people want so badly to have lived in his era and watched his ascension. That, I mean, he went from villain to hero at 214 and like that. And I think he will do that again. And it's not because he says the right things and then fails again. It's just because, I mean, he's the Jordan. He's it.
He's the guy. And I remember I watched 214 last night, actually. And I remember afterwards, you remember John being on his hands and knees covering himself after he got the belt, crying. And Joe came over and Joe said, "You did it." You know, he's like, "You made it back." Right. He goes, "I made it back." And there was all these moments and it felt so big and so interesting. But here's the other part about it. Cormier will not let you forget about John's issues. Gustafsson has said explicitly,
he doesn't care.
"I don't give an F." I also think that will make a difference in this one.
That's 100% right. Because that's what, when we went into that press conference I mentioned that was happening in New York, I wondered how Gustafsson would handle that because you knew that would be an inevitable storyline in this. He seemed to be immediately shrugging his shoulders to it and saying like, "Hey, I'm not making that a story."
Yeah, you knew some idiot would ask him at that press conference.
Yeah. Welcome to Exile Island, Brian Campbell. Join me. The water's
his answer might as well just been this, right?
Yeah, more or less. But the point being is, in the end, you bring it up more when he's fighting Cormier because Cormier won't let you forget it. Gustafsson will let you forget it, and I think that will ultimately.
Cormier controls the narrative in that sense. Like he's a media man to himself. You know what I mean? He understands how to do that.
But the fight also controls the narrative. The fact that the first Gus Jones fight is
for sure
the best title fight in UFC history, right? So that narrative almost trumps it as well to finally see this a second time, even though the betting odds makers are telling us it's not going to be a close
I can't argue this, but if you ask me what the best fight is, it probably is that one in light heavyweight history. But I went back and I watched 214 again, as I mentioned. I got to tell you, the first two rounds of Cormier, Jones 2, might be the two best rounds in terms of skill level and execution I think I've ever seen. I was blown away by it.
Cormier was doing great.
Both guys were making adjustments on the other ones from the last one, and in real time, it was pretty amazing to watch. Now, the other fight, the co-main event that I want to get to, is kind of flying under the radar a little bit. We'll do under the radar later. Is of course
the beat off. Yeah.
Yes, and then the beat off, and then we get fired. The other part is Amanda Nunez jumping up a weight class to take on Cyborg Justino. Let me ask you, Chuck, and I'm going to pitch it to you this way: when you think about this fight, what do you think of as the prevailing either narrative or question, or when you conceive of this fight in your mind? For example, I conceive of Jones versus Gus 2 as important for both guys' legacy, for the title. Those are the ways in which I identify it. How do you identify and think about what's the salient issue there?
So I think it's the first time there's actual doubt over a Cyborg fight. That's my narrative. I think that this is the first time somebody has come up where you're thinking this may be different. Now, will Amanda Nunez be able to do that? I don't know. But she's certainly at the height of her skills, and she's coming from a head of momentum, from 7 fights in a row, and she's looked very good in those fights. I just feel like there's actual momentum this time. This isn't just some random person, or it's not somebody who had a free schedule, or you know what I mean? Like the people they've been kind of plugging in to fight Cyborg. The closest was Holly Holm, but I still believe Amanda Nunez presents the biggest problems for her. And that to me is fun because, it's with anything. You were talking about Gustafsson and John Jones. The reason that fight turned epic is because there were so many people who couldn't conceive that it would be competitive. So I feel like if Amanda Nunez goes in there and she actually can look like herself and get off and do the things that she knows she can do and kind of dictate that space a little bit, this will carry something of an epic change to it because we've never seen that with Cyborg. So there's that element to it, and I like that. A lot of people I know are discounting Amanda Nunez, but it seems kind of crazy for me to think like that. You know what I mean? I know you were one of the original ones, weren't you? Like, because when we talked.
Yes, I was originally.
But you turned around. I feel like you're kind of more on Nunez.
I've made a few mistakes in my life in terms of opinions.
Yeah, you were like,
I'm sorry, Max.
You're like, Max Holloway's done.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Max. I cared about you.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're kind of like the guy, whatever you say, go bet the opposite way and you'll make a lot of money.
Always bet against Brian is our new show here.
Whatever I eat the opposite.
What do you wait? What's the biggest question?
Oh, without a question, for a biggest question or biggest
Issue. How you conceive
angle
of this?
coming in is I think this is the greatest fight in UFC women's history, in MMA women's history on paper. Certainly, there's been larger commercial affairs, the Rousey Tate rematch. You know, we've seen a few others, and obviously the home Rousey may have been the biggest reaction we've ever had. But coming in, this is a true super fight, champion versus champion, and I think the long-term legacy issues in this could go even further. Where, look, a lot of people believe Cyborg's the greatest female fighter of all time.
True.
I think with a win here for Amanda Nunez, she has a really sneaky good GOAT conversation when you consider the run she's been through, dominating and finishing and retiring Rousey, beating Tate for the title, beating a prime Shevchenko, and now if she
Twice.
beating Holm, and now if she can defeat that's a really sneaky run at it.
Of course, she does have the loss to Zingano, Sarah DeLeo.
Certainly, but here's the thing: Rousey's legacy is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years, and I think it's going to mirror what Royce Gracie was. You know, there was certainly a period where Royce Gracie was the GOAT because we never seen anybody dominate like that. Who's Royce Gracie today when UFC turns 25? He's the Babe Ruth pioneer of MMA.
He's the guy at Dave and Buster's for Bellator events.
Yeah. Right. Babe Ruth's hitting 60 home runs when African Americans weren't allowed to play. And I'm not, don't quote me on, I mean, that's a point people say. I'm not going down that road. But my point is, Rousey also, we know, dominated in a different era. And yes, there was dominance, but she's going to be looked at more as a pioneer in the long run. Cyborg, I think, is the real GOAT. Nunez with a clean win, man.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't move the needle critically outside of that UFC 200 main event slot. She's proven that. 2 of the lowest pay-per-views in history. I mean, if you look up those Pennington numbers and was it 85,000 they moved? But critically, she's moving product, and you know it, Luke. When you look in the mirror and question shaving every morning, you're thinking about that.
I don't question shaving. I just I shaved right before the show, and it just grows like this instantaneously.
So much testosterone. We should probably get a VADA test on you.
There's nothing I can do about it. I am merely at the mercy of this Badaba. Okay, well, these are big questions. We'll deal with them more as all next week, really. We are on the verge of Christmas. Between now and the next show, Christmas will have happened, folks. Christmas missed us. Okay, I don't want it to miss MMA. So here's what we're going to do, a little bit of game. If you could give one gift to the sport, something it needs, something it asked for, what would it be? We'll start there and work our way forward. A gift for MMA.
I would give it a cure for the injury bug.
All right.
I just feel like, the biggest problem with fighting is because they base it around, MMA especially, they base it around these big events, the big names at the top of the card. It feels like we are batting like maybe 50% when we get to that card. Whatever iteration, whatever it was meant to be, becomes something else. And at some point, that really wears on you when you cannot get to the fights that you want. The Tony Ferguson and Nurmagomedov fight being the one that's the most obvious. But it's like, we've had Frankie Edgar and Holloway, guys like this, like fights you really want to see, and they keep falling out last second. That would be the one thing. If I could give them something that would, cure their ills, that's the way I would do it. I would be like, no more injuries. Of course, that will never happen. But that's the hardest thing. How many times I've had to revise a piece I've written, for the Ringer or something like that, where you do the whole breakdown, and then you're like, oh wait, this guy missed weight and this guy's hurt and whatever, and then you have to go back and revise the whole thing. So that's what I'm in
the same line of thinking, along with Cormier Jones 3. The thing I want for the sport most is to curtail the extreme weight cutting. And I know this comes up almost every other episode because almost every other fight card there's a threat or something. I've talked about it many times. We've debated it. I think you have more weigh-ins. And I think you do it multiple times during the week, and you have a threshold, and you limit the ability for fights to fall out, for people to threaten their life by standing on the scales, and what you ultimately have by people fighting closer to their natural weight is better fights. Look at how good Frankie Edgar was at lightweight back in the day. He didn't care about weight cutting. He was in there fighting full-bodied and happy. I'd like to see more of that at this level.
To eat just to get on the
I don't want to see somebody die for the changes to have to make. And I know I suddenly care about people too much, and I thought Max maybe needed some more time off. Man, Max looks so damn good.
Yeah, he did.
I was so happy for him too. And all the hate tweets at me.
You must have been watching that fight being like, Jesus Christ.
But can you get all the hate tweets at me? Do you think I wanted to be right? Do you think I wanted Max's career to end?
Very quickly, what was your timeline like that?
It was an absolute mess. I mean, it was just like, see, I told you so. Well, I'm happy, by the way. I'm happy for him.
It's like, we're not upset that Max did well, by the way. We're just, he was a little concerned. For me, there's a couple different ways I would go. If I had to give a gift, now not a stocking stuffer, but a gift, it would be that ESPN reincorporate a sense of what is good for the customer. When Fox and UFC got together, they did a lot of great things, and I don't want to take that away from them, but one thing that they did was they constructed the product predominantly for how good it was for them. Let's put on main cards at 10 p.m. and 6 fights, and each one, no matter how quickly it goes, will be 30 minutes. So we could just sell as much ad inventory as possible. We'll put a fight card in a place that doesn't need to be just because that's how we need to fill a calendar. And I understand a lot of that's still going to happen. But I don't think that the fans are asking for much when they say, can you put some of the fight cards a little bit earlier? Can you make them a little bit smaller? Can you make them a little bit zippier? It wouldn't take much. If you cut down those broadcasts by, let's say, 45 minutes, that's a lot in the end. You can feel that. And so I think just thinking about what the customer wants, even if it's not necessarily the best for what the brands want, in the end will be what the brands benefit from when the customers don't get so fatigued with it in the end.
Right. I mean, how many times are we, it's an East Coast bias probably for the three of us, but how many times is it 1:04 a.m. in this UFC fight night, which isn't even that important of a card? The main event of a 6-fight main card is rolling out. Going earlier, we'd all like earlier. Obviously, it competes against the idea of college football in the fall, and that's always a problem. But I always bang that drum of saying, can we go to other nights per week? Can we be a little bit more creative to get that? Because when you think of UFC on Fox, the first thing I think of is 8 p.m. Eastern, man. I mean, it's the greatest thing.
It was so awesome. Even the UFC on FXs were 9 p.m. and there were 4 fights, and they were glorious. As a stocking stuffer, that would be my gift under the tree. As a stocking stuffer, it would be for everyone to get a sense of humor. Everyone in MMA is so uptight and so serious and so, what'd you say, bro? Like it's a 19th century honor culture rather than a culture of 20th century dignity. And it's just hard to have any kind of honest conversation. So if everyone could just lighten up a little bit, I think we'd all be better off. Any stocking stuffers? Any little things you give?
Man, I kind of like that one because
wouldn't it make conversation a little bit better?
Levity, yes. I mean, like at its root, there should be a lot of levity in this sport. Just look at the character. I mean, just the characters and what you're covering, and sometimes the absurdity of what you're talking about. Like these things should carry some kind of comical, flair to them.
It's 2018 and Face the Pain is still around, and everyone's covered in tats up their chest, and it's just these. It's cage fighting. It's. Boxing and MMA are absolutely ridiculous sports. It's freaking prize fighting.
But they can be fine wine under the right circumstances.
Right.
That's the difference.
I'm not trying to discount the technical and the science and all that, and I'm certainly not discounting the severe realities of the sport and how many times it can turn negative. But at its core, man, it's two guys fighting. Yeah. There's trash talking involved. Yeah. It's fun. Yeah. Can we all laugh a little bit more?
There's not a sport that has as many blowhards, liars, just con men. I mean, if you don't find the humor in that, then I don't know why you're doing it.
The amount of vaporware of nothingness we're surrounded by that we have to treat as real. Oh my God! To be honest with you, the last thing I'd say, it was funny. The last thing I'd say about this is the tattoo thing. It bothers me when folks are like, "Oh my God, MMA fighters have the worst tattoos." That is not true. That is so not true. Now, I'm not here to defend them as having the best ones either. They're on par.
Yeah.
For example, basketball players. I've said it 2 points before. Number one, they wear a top, so you can only really see their arms. The other one is, and this is not, I'm not saying anything controversial here. A lot of them are obviously African American. It's a little bit harder to see visible tattoos on darker skin like that, so you can't really see. You ever seen John Wall's tattoos? They're the worst shit you've ever seen. It looks like someone barfed on him.
Well, I think we're past the point on the inside of MMA to bring up the tattoos as like a negative thing. Originally, it was like Bob Arum saying it's.
Now it's just part of what it is.
I think it's become their uniform.
Yes.
Because,
what stands out is the clean canvases, the people who have no tattoos.
I know. It's like, what?
They actually stand out now. You see them, you're like, whoa, this guy looks extremely naked.
I'm just defending MMA a little bit. They got the worst tattoos, and they have the most visible tattoos. Yeah. Big difference.
Luke, do you have any tattoos? Just bleed on the chest?
I have many tattoos.
Tattoo on titty?
I got the DC flag here on my arm the other weekend, and I'm going to get this whole thing. I'm going to get some Marine Corps tattoos up in here. So the thing is, I waited till I was 40 because I'm 40. First of all, my dad's going to ground me. Like, I mean, that's not going to happen. And, you know, what is it? I'm having a midlife crisis and I'm going to buy a convertible or get tattoos. I'm just going to get tattoos.
You getting into CrossFit before your tattoo craze is only going to make it more expensive.
CrossFit is for losers. Okay, let's move along here if we can. Now, speaking of injuries, you brought that up. Boy, that would be really helpful in 2019 because Dominick Cruz was on ESPN, I believe, this week, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Man, this one just really breaks my heart. He apparently was in sparring and threw out his shoulder. I don't know all of the medical science other than to say, as I brought this up a million times, I'm currently in rehab for this shoulder. I had surgery on this one. These are problems that take a long time to heal, and that's when you're a world-class athlete like Dom, much less some idiot like me. He is going to be out for probably about a year. We may see him again in 2019, but it's hard to really say. You go back and you do the math, and it's devastating on him because he's missed 5, potentially 6 years. Understand, he turns 34 in March.
Wow.
And here's what's amazing to me, Brian, about Dominick, and I wonder what you make of all this. You go back and look at UFC 148, the pay-per-view that sold 925,000 buys with Silva and Son, and he was supposed to be on that, lost all that money. Now you're looking at, forget just that payday. What about all the other paydays he was supposed to have? He is still considered to be by many the GOAT bantamweight, and he's lost 6 years of his prime. It is hard to overstate that without a shadow of a doubt, true or false, he is the unluckiest fighter when it comes to injuries by far in MMA history.
True, no question about it. When you consider the talent and you consider that, I mean, if anyone wants to make he's in the top 5 pound for pound all the time and make that kind of argument, he's actually that good where you can make it. And it's heartbreaking until you listen to him. And I give credit for Ariel at ESPN for such an incredible interview this week where you cannot come out of hearing Dom Cruz talk about his circumstances. And it's not just the inspiration you pull out of it. This guy is the most thoughtful, smart ability to look at his life from the outside looking in person that I've really ever come across. It's not just, oh, it's another setback, I'm going to plow through it and I'll be back. It's how he uses the setbacks to fuel him, and it's no wonder he's such an amazing analyst. And I think DC's humor might put him as my favorite fighter analyst, but Cruz, I think, is the best at breaking things down. And it's, yes, this sad story, but he had one key line in that interview where he basically said, it's not, look at all I've accomplished despite the injuries. It's look at what I've accomplished because of the injuries and how much they fueled him. I mean, his comeback to win that title in Boston, was it, against Dillashaw. I don't know if that moment, we even look back a couple of years now, we value it as much as we should have for how much he's come back. And then he's getting hurt again. He'll be back. Yeah. He'll probably fight for a title again. For all we know, he might win it. Yeah. You cannot count this guy out. So for as much as I want to sit here and do the whole, man, woe is him, he won't let me do the woe is him thing there. And I have never believed in one person more who can come back and be right back at that level because of this, not because of the speed of his body or his heart, because he's so damn smart.
I will say that he has spent a great deal of his time in recovery and everything else with, just refueling his determination, his will, you can tell. But also, I think, just introspection. I think he does that more than probably any other, there's more than any fighter who actually communicates it that well. You can tell that he puts a lot of effort into who he is. Like, he understands himself on levels that other guys might not. And it's crazy to me that you were at that Washington fight when he fought Demetrius Johnson. Yeah. He's fought 4 times since then, and that was in 2011, I believe it was. And it's just, you look at the people's careers since 2011, what they've done. Demetrius Johnson has become the greatest, the greatest flyweight of all time. Now he's gone from the UFC. This guy's fought 4 times, and if you take out 2016, he's fought once in all those other years. It's just, it's beyond snake bitten. It's like, I don't know. It's like, it goes into something where you're like, you can't help but feel for the guy. He was also just such a competitor. He wants to compete. You know what I mean? Like, you hear him talk to other guys. He wants to be in there. It's part of his nature to do that. And the fact that he can never get in there consistently, it must kill him on some level, He's almost, we say, like, some guys are too tough for their own good. I might argue that, and I don't know, argue is a strong word. Part of me wonders if he's too smart for his own good. And here's what I mean by that. I interviewed him years ago. I forget which one it was. I think it was the Uriah Faber rematch, something like that. And he was telling me that to keep his plantar fasciitis from being just crippling, which is where the roof of your foot essentially hurts like a son of a bitch, he had to Botox the bottom of his feet.
right? So it would numb him out, so he could just do what he does on his feet like that. And then you begin to wonder, it's like this guy thought about what's a way I could make a movement style that no one could catch up with. I mean, obviously Garbrandt did what he did, but it worked for a really long time. But it turned out that it absolutely crushed his body, it seems to me. It's just so much activity that you have to do that it's just too hard to maintain. And I wonder if he almost outsmarted more than his body could keep up with.
That's interesting. And I did a big piece on him where I was hanging with him in Toronto. I went to a local gym there, and I was watching him do his stuff. And I'll tell you, man, that's the whole thing. His movement, and even in sparring, just all of the different things he's doing. I could see that 100%. I could see what you're saying.
He has a chance to, he's so unique in that, and I think he has a chance to have a really unique legacy if he has one more trick left. Because if you compare it to NBA terms, we've seen a Grant Hill, a Bernard King have their prime robbed for them, but they hung around, they lingered, they had moments, they became quality role players, or even Bernard King an all-star once more, but never the same player. When he came back and beat Dillashaw and beat Faber, I mean, he was evolved a little bit, but he was still the elite same guy. Can he do that one more time? Can he be a guy
wouldn't that be incredible?
Well, think about his other times he's had the layoffs. He's come back. I know the Mizugaki, I think, was the one. He came back. He looked great. But then there was another long layoff. But he wanted to be right in the title mix right away. All of his fights, I think, out of like the last 10, 9 of them have had to do, except for the Mizugaki, have had to do with the title. Even with after the long layoffs, that's the kind of guy he is. You know?
What if you just said this? He's so smart that this crazy style destroyed his body and allowed him to win. What if all this giant rest in between allows him to ultimately sustain his career? He can't keep it up for long periods.
And you see these guys like Overeem who are really smart competitors. They just figure out new ways to fight. Maybe he can adapt that style for this last chapter, whatever it would be, chapter, and he can have a additional act in his career. It'd be phenomenal if he came back.
You don't think he's a genius? Just listen to him talk. And like I said, it's not the traditional inspirational guy. It's a much deeper, thought process on how he can use every single setback to his advantage to get better.
He considers variables that other people don't even know exist. Right? I mean, that's the sort of level. To me, he's my favorite analyst. Every time I get a chance to talk to him, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm a kid in Christmas.
I thought he was standoffish when I first started interviewing him initially, and I didn't get it at
first.
He has
a certain, I thought he was bitter at me one time, so I went up to him. This is true. I went up to him and I was like, are you bitter at me? Because if people are bitter at me, I'm trying to resolve. Everyone's bitter at me, so I'm trying to make sure that I can, put out fires where possible. And he was like, no, but basically what my takeaway from he actually was not mad at me at all, but the way I remember the conversation was he just has a certain fiery intensity, and when he's going to these events and talking to these fighters to prep, he's not worried about what you're doing. You know what I mean?
He's not even looking at you.
He's driven.
I remember the very first time I ever met him. He was at Brandon Vera's, Alliance?
Yeah, Alliance.
And people were all there for Brandon Vera. So every time you were at that gym, it was to see Brandon Vera. He was just kind of a side note there. There's a couple of other guys, but he was not really the guy, right? And I remember Brandon Vera saying, hey Dom, he kept yelling, turn down the radio, we're trying to do an interview. And Dominick Cruz came over and he's like, watch out for this guy. He's going to be something big soon, that type of thing. And I remember he just kind of shot daggers. It was like you just kind of, no smiling, no hello, no nothing. It was just complete, like you said, intensity is 100% right.
People talk about Rory McDonald's ice grilling, and it's substantial. But for me, no one ice grills quite like Dominick Cruz, man. And then he ends up actually being quite friendly, intense, but very friendly. And so I've always had pretty good interaction with him. And I really hope that this is not the end. But the only thing I would say is it's a good thing, but also a bad thing, is if he wasn't as smart as he is and could figure out another way to compete, we'll see how that goes. But also maintain employment by being a hell of an analyst and commentator. You have to wonder, what if he was stupid, right? He's not, but let's say he was. Would his career be over by now because he wouldn't be able to keep himself afloat or relevant? You have to wonder about that.
I would have had to have come back in times he shouldn't have.
The fact that he's brilliant has really saved him, and it saved us as well. It's great to have him around. So we're pulling for Dom here. I really hope there's another act in that career. Now, speaking of long layoffs, God, I am so tired of this story, but it continues. Nick Diaz, apparently, is not fighting at UFC 235. And I went back and I listened to the audio from Dana White at the last press conference. He was like, to my knowledge, as of Tuesday or whatever, it was still on. So, that's not quite a confirmation, but it's pretty dang close. And then Nick Diaz being like, what are you talking about? This is what I don't understand, Brian. Okay, how can they always be so far apart?
Both Diaz's in the UFC. What the hell?
So this is my first one. One, you talk to one guy, he's like, it's not official, but we're close. And then you talk to one of them, and it's always like, we don't even know what you're talking about. That's the first part. The second part is this. Here's what I don't get. UFC and the Diaz brothers are not good partners. Think about how much time both Diaz brothers have spent on the shelf. And whether you want to blame the Diazes or whether you want to blame the UFC, it does not work. It does not work. If it works poorly, okay, in general. You think about all the opportunity costs that we've had to eat. Why do they keep this around? Why can't the Diaz brothers, for example, buy themselves out of their contract? It's not working for either party. What are they doing?
It's ridiculous. What do I really want for Christmas? What's the stocking stuffer? I'll put my fist right through that stocking and say, can we get the Diaz brothers back? I mean, Nate would have been the story at 2:30 just to see him, just to smell it, just to touch it, just to roll it. It would have been great just to get there. Here's the ultimate point. Yeah, they're probably hard to deal with. Yeah, every time it's Dana says, I offered them 75 fights and they turned him down. Nick and Nate say, they never offered me any. So it's always he said, she said. But you know what? Stars are really hard to deal with. The UFC loves Conor McGregor because ultimately they can do the whiskey thing backstage and ultimately he'll fight anybody on short notice. He's a company guy. But he's also really hard to deal with at the same time, right?
Yes.
But yet it's, that's fine. We'll just cover it up. Can you realize, UFC, can you come into my living room here and realize what you have in these Diaz brothers? Guys who move product, guys who are cult heroes, anti-heroes that the fans love and enjoy, and one day we're all going to wake up and they're going to be 40 years old and washed, and they'll probably be fighting Data 5050 on Bellator one day. But before then, can we put them in relevant fights? Because since Nick last fought against Anderson Silva, there's only been 3 pay-per-views that sold more that didn't involve Rousey or McGregor. Rousey and McGregor ones are always going to sell.
Yeah.
That means Nick can still move product. We know certainly Nate can. He got the Conor rub, and then he's done nothing. Don't tell me it's the Diaz brothers' fault. They are who they are, and we love them because they are who they are. UFC, get it together.
Do you remember Scott Coker had Nick Diaz under his umbrella at Strikeforce? Do you remember there being conflicts at that time?
No. Things have probably changed. I wonder if he'd be as smooth, but to your point, no.
So, I mean, it's not like these guys are that hard. I mean, you know that they're hard to deal with, but I feel like it's just been taken to the umpteenth degree with Dana White for whatever reason. This goes back to his very first fight at UFC 137 when he was late to the press conferences and he's like, nope, you're no longer fighting for the title against UFC. Now you're going to fight BJ Penn. And since that time, it has literally been butting heads the whole way. I feel like the whole way we've gone through it, and it's of course extended to Nate Diaz, who's kind of adopted some of the Nick, attitude as time went on. But I agree with you. At some point, you're like, it gets exhausting, man. And when you really look at it, you're like, Nick Diaz, it's almost like what could prove that he's a cult hero in this game or an anti-hero, however you want to look at it, more than the fact that he's won one UFC fight since 2006.
People are dying to see him.
Since 2006.
Dying.
It's like 12 years he has won BJ Penn. And if they're dying to see him, I mean, to me, that speaks all the volume you want. It's not even about wins and losses with these guys. It's just about getting them as part of the fight week and the whole ambiance. You know what I mean? To me, how the UFC can't get behind their brand and just kind of promote them the right way, I don't get.
Go ahead. No.
Well, we're in the era of UFC will sell their souls to move traffic. Brock Lesnar, you're coming off of a drug test. We'll put you in a title shot right away because it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's entertainment. We want to move business. I think we'll look back at from Conor McGregor's last fight before his hiatus against Eddie Alvarez to his comeback earlier this year. There was the dark ages in terms of them moving product. There was like 2 pay-per-views that did over 1 million buys during that stretch. And that was a time where they were dramatically trying to drug up anybody who can be a star. Let's rub you up. Oh, Ngannou, he's the next Mike Tyson of MMA. He's this and that. Do you realize how different maybe business could have been in the last 2.5 years if Dana took Nick and Nate and embraced them and gave them the Conor star treatment?
Look at the groundswell just in the UFC that was in New York and Dustin Poirier just to create a weight class for it. I mean, people were getting behind that movement to create the weight class and make it for the inaugural bout with Dustin Poirier and Diaz. Why?
Why would they sell
Diaz,
their
right? And I was thinking, the other part is, I bet the UFC would say, oh, well, we tried to do all this. We tried to do this. They're hard to work with.
Pay him.
Here's my thought. It's like, I would like to see that theory tested on the open market. I would like to see what, I said this on my radio show. Can you imagine if both Diaz brothers signed with Bellator, but also had like a side deal with DAZN where they could go box and DAZN could say home of the Diaz brothers?
A reality show? Come on.
I mean, are you kidding me? This wouldn't move product? I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that they wouldn't be competitive. Can they be hard to deal with? Do Diaz brothers change their minds? Yes, I'm sure that's
There's a lot
true.
of fighters that are hard to
Yeah,
do.
John Jones is one of them too, as well.
But here's my point: if you're going to be in the Diaz business, then be in the Diaz business. Do not be in a situation where we're just sitting here wondering, like, oh, another fight that fell through. Make it or cut him loose, man. Because I think what really happens here is they'll make it on their terms. The UFC will, if that will happen, which it never does. At least Bellator can't have them. I mean, fuck this. This is so terrible.
What
I'm
would
so tired of
2017
this.
2017 have looked like if it was like Nate and Habib, if it was Nick and Woodley? It's like,
God.
hey, Dana, you have these fighters that you don't like in theory, like Tyron Woodley, who you think don't move product. Can you put him against Nick right now? Can we sell that fight?
And
is it that hard?
by the way, you never have to worry the weed thing a little bit, but you never really have to worry about USADA, and you never really have to worry about injuries with those guys. They just kind of show up. Huh?
Yeah, but the weed thing.
And even
they're
that, they've won
very
that
good.
argument.
I know those guys though are also just they're way more professional than they get credit. Like they're way smarter than they get credit. They know what they're doing. You know,
They're natural B-sides commercially too. Natural. They're villains. You can take anyone that you want.
Yeah, but they're
to be a
not
star.
villains. They're anti-heroes. They're a big difference.
They are to the hardcore fan, to the general public. You can present them as villains, and if you have a new babyface on the rise that you think can be somebody, and you put them in with a Diaz, it's business.
Yes.
It works. I just don't understand how you can sell your soul on one half and be willing to do anything. Oh, Darren Till, you missed weight and you didn't beat Thompson, but here's a title shot.
Yeah.
But for these guys, no, we can't touch it.
I don't get it. And again, you want to keep him under contract? Fine, make him fight, make the fights, or just let him loose. I'm tired of it.
Yep.
Now, speaking of that Nick Diaz-Anderson Silva fight, old Andy been back in the news this week, huh? I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. So apparently he has 3 fights left on his contract. He opened up a new gym, which I heard is really nice. And so I guess one of those fights is the Israel Adesanya fight. But the one fight that they brought up, and I saw the boys on the A-Side live chat brought this up. Mark Ramundi, you are high. You've been smoking with the Diaz brothers. Let me tell you that. Pitching it, first of all, I don't even understand this one. First of all, he goes after GSP for taking easy fights. It's like, you mean the guy, he took the title from the guy who beat you? And by the way, you and Jones were together at a time and you never went up to fight him. Which I don't blame you
so he's
for.
been selective with Anderson
Yeah,
Silva.
it's like, by the way, like GSP's resume is amazing, but okay, whatever. That aside, the one that really got me was the Conor McGregor one. Now, we all know what he's doing. He's trying to get a big fat payday. But the 180 thing at the weight class with Conor, I got to be honest, I kind of get it, obviously on some level. On another level, it's a little on the sad side to be pitching that, isn't it? What read did you get when he pitched that?
He back. Trust me, he back, and I think that he wants to be in fun fights that matter.
That's a stupid fight.
Well, dude, you know what was a stupid
completely
fight?
unjustifiable.
Him against Derek Brunson was a stupid fight.
No,
in
it's
a
not
way.
a stupid fight.
It was at the
It's
time.
It's a bad fight or a boring fight. It's not a stupid fight.
Why is him and Conor a stupid fight? Mark Ramundi, call up your dealer, inject it into my veins. Can we have this fight right now?
3 weight classes above? Are you high? He couldn't even fight properly at 170. You want to add another 10 pounds to that?
It's a circus celebrity fight, and it is what it is. We've had CM Punk
my
on
appetite
here.
for that. Yeah, oh boy, that worked out wonderfully, didn't it?
I'm just saying, we are already in the business where these fights can happen. The crossover effect on that one?
You guys are like, well, one person littered, so it's fine if we all just litter.
Oh.
No, you get a lot of litter that way.
I mean, this is all big if and hypothetical, right? Because he's fighting Adesanya, which basically is my idea that the UFC's putting him on the ice floor and giving it a kick and saying, so long, Anderson Silva. You know what I mean? But if they're really going to stay in that business, and it depends on how he looks in it, I'm all about, like, if they want to give him a title shot against Gastelum or Whitaker, fine. Because the guy has the legacy, he was like the face of the middle.
With it.
That's fine. That particular fight that you're talking about just seems like he's entering the Conor sweepstakes type thing, and it makes no sense to me. I'm like, it makes zero sense.
No way.
It makes zero sense.
Aging fighters who no longer can contend for titles, and I think Anderson's in that category, even though he is suddenly getting into a fight that could get him a title shot. They deserve to fight other names. It's the old Rick Franklin thing. Just stay in the bullpen, be within this weight and this weight, and we'll call you up and we'll have you save a main event, or you'll fight another old guy.
This is outside of the appropriate limit.
This would move product. You're not. This is.
Are you under the impression that I cared about that as a defining feature of it? I do not care about
Manny
that.
Pacquiao against Oscar De La Hoya. In some ways, was the same thing. We never
No,
would have
it
guessed
was not,
Pacquiao
dude.
could be a welterweight and fight and take those punches.
Dude, come on. You were talking about a bruising marauder who was just burning through weight classes at the time. That's not the same thing as a guy who's like kind of lost his last one, kind of lost, had PED issues. You could sort of like fudge it together if you really didn't give an F.
Well, what's your ultimate ultimate issue? That fight should never happen, or that it shouldn't happen right now?
Why do I want to see elite fighters compete under extraordinarily suboptimal conditions?
Because it's not as extraordinary if
defeats
somebody's washed. That's why it evens the stakes to a certain degree.
Not really. It makes it dumb. It makes it pointless. You're gonna have Conor McGregor, who still in his prime, ostensibly, going against a guy who has been, if not the best fighter, certainly one of the best ones ever, a legendary striker who is far past it, and they are far apart in weight. Tell me what we learned from this. There's nothing to it other than the titillation of seeing some kind of bizarre permutation. It's the same excuse that they made for Mayweather and McGregor. Look how weird it is.
Why is
and
that?
then the movie ends exactly the way you thought it would.
Okay,
what is
but
the point?
so does Cormier-Lesnar. Why is that fight any better? So if you're already in the
Lesnar
business,
is still competitive among top heavyweights. No, it's not the same.
When he has
At
fought.
UFC 200, he went through Mark Hunt like it was nothing.
Did you not see that needle hanging out of his ass cheek?
Yeah, all your favorite athletes are on steroids.
Yeah.
I got really bad news for you. All of them are, okay? So here's the point. To me, it's like, and whatever, they sanctioned him for it. And if he comes back and looks terrible, fine. I'm not saying the title shot's deserved. I'm not even justifying it. What you're saying is, well, what's the difference? A mountain is the difference. They're not even in the same
It's also
universe.
just a collective sense of vitality through fighters' careers. I just feel like Anderson Silva making these kinds of here's what I want. He's not in that space to do that right now.
I disagree with that.
I
don't
disagree
think
with
so,
all
no.
of you.
Let me hear why.
Because he hasn't been the same in the last fight. He's just served a suspension. He's been, he's had multiple red flags over the last few years, and he hasn't really looked the same. He hasn't been the same guy. It's been diminishing returns, is what I mean. So I don't believe he's this isn't 36-year-old Anderson Silva saying,
Oh, I see what you mean.
Which is why this fight makes sense.
I know
washed.
what you're saying, but you know what I mean? Like a vitality in terms of, being able to dictate what they want at this point. I feel like he has no real reason. I could understand them wanting to get, if he gets by Adesanya, which is the biggest if you could possibly have right now. I could understand them saying like, okay, you get kind of grandfathered back into a title shot because you are who you are. But right this second, before the Adesanya fight, I don't feel like he has the clout right now, honestly, to be calling all his shots.
By the way,
that.
UFC offering him the title shot is the greatest hedge ever, because if he does beat Adesanya and Israel's not for real, then Silva's the ultimate rub for Whitaker. Do that fight overseas, and this aging
And
hero
if he
that
gets by
everybody knows his
Whitaker,
name.
you know, it'd be a fun fight is maybe bring McGregor up.
well, here, let me just tell you one more thing on that.
All right.
He's washed, guys. Okay, so that it becomes
Like Max, huh?
Okay, this is creative matchmaking.
Bet on fucking
Do you
Anderson
realize
Silva.
what the root of this sport is? Can this skinny guy in a gi who weighs 170 pounds soaking wet from Brazil that lives out on the beach and babysits his brother's kids, can he beat that 300-pound sumo guy?
The root of governance in human society is a king, but we've moved on from monarchies, man.
So what I'm
we
saying
don't have
is,
to go back
it's
to them.
not that bizarre. Ultimately, it's a little old school, if you will. It's two guys with giant names who have really fun styles.
It's not old school. It's short bus.
Do you know what it would have been?
Sense.
You know what? Nick and Anderson didn't play out the way we wanted to. Nick did too much Nick things, ultimately. But when we thought of that fight at first, we're like, damn, this is kind of creative. This could be wild. This could be fun. Yeah. That's what this fight would be. Conor would be lighting him up with punches and then trying to duck from kicks, and it would be this scene. It would be a scene, and we've already passed the point of trying to say, oh, that fight shouldn't happen because it's ridiculous. We've seen Punk, Lesnar's coming back. There's a lot of BS in this sport. Dada friggin' 5,000, all right? We've seen a lot of crap in this sport. As far as crap goes, I'd buy this one, and it smells kind of good for now, okay? Come on.
Your appetite for nonsense is extraordinary. Now,
You're telling me that's nonsense to want Conor Anderson? It's creative.
It is nonsense, yes. Yes. It is for people who...
This is entertainment. You remember that, right?
How do I be disparaging to the max? Let me think.
I'm not saying it has to be next. Conor,
count.
it's maybe not the smartest use of Conor right now because you want to get him looking good. You want to get him back in there. But
no, it's terrible. If they wanted to make it at 170, I could maybe kind of like, but to be like, oh, go up 2.5 weight classes?
I know.
What nonsense. Total nonsense.
do you remember that time Roy Jones fought a heavyweight and won a heavyweight title against the handpicked guy? But I'm saying it's creative. It's unique.
These are not the same situations, dude. They're not. They're so not.
Do you remember that time I went into the gas station and ate everything that was there?
You mean today? All right, one more of these and we'll do under the radar very quickly. UFC on Fox is now behind us, gentlemen. I would argue it didn't really do what it was supposed to do, but it wasn't a failure either in my mind. When I think about it, right, the 8 p.m. start times on the East Coast was phenomenal. 4 fights, and then the main card, or the main event, obviously being a 5-round main event. These were just tremendous. viewing experience, especially for those on the East Coast. But what really stood out to me was you go back and listen to what Lorenzo Fertitta had to say when the deal was signed, and his basic point was about the Fox deal generally, that all we have to do is add 100,000 subscribers already to what we have, and the whole deal will be worth it. If nothing else works out and we just do that, we're in. And he had said that as a very modest expectation. And the whole world of television kind of changed during that time. Consumer consumption habits changed. It's why I like the ESPN deal. It's a little bit future-proof, right? That's sort of one of the things that I like about it. But in the end, it made me really consider, the shows were not a failure. The ratings declined, but they were still pretty good.
The matchmaking declined along with the ratings.
So what is that particular show? Not the global deal, but that show, that 8 p.m. show. There's now 31 of them in the books. What's its legacy?
I think for the hardcore fans, the first half of that legacy was to get a poor man's pay-per-view for free on regular TV, and that was kind of cool. I think its goal, ultimately, it didn't reach, which was, let's make MMA, let's have it lap NASCAR and NHL and be the legitimate fourth sport. It never quite got there. There were certain peak and period moments where, one star could, right before that era, the Lesnar era, pushed that sport up really high. It never got there, but did it get into people's living rooms and become more of a regular thing? I would say the Fox deal was huge in that regard. I would say that every milestone moment is important to get to where we are today. Like, to get to that $4 billion sale in 2016, you certainly need Bonner, Griffin 1. You certainly need the rise and fall of Lesnar. You certainly need these things to happen. But I don't think specifically we get to 2016 in that sale without this Fox deal. You can argue how much you can ever legitimize a sport as MMA with blood on the canvas and somebody sitting on another guy's chest, ultimately, right? And tattoos and face the pain and all that stuff. But I think the Fox deal did a really nice job for those people that are going to see that on their TV and run and hide, making it more palatable and digestible and making that sport where before that deal, it was still like saying you watched really gross porn if you watched MMA. We were still there in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
But I think it made moves. I think in my daily life and talking to people, it made the sport become much more legitimate.
I don't know, man. I mean, I felt like it was on that trajectory. I really did for a while there. Like, I felt like the matchmaking was, like you mentioned, I think they were trying to fortify it enough to bring in their hardcore audience, but also track the, new fans and all that sort of thing. And we saw them try different approaches, booking like the Paige Van Zants and the Sage Northcutts and those types of people, the people who are easier on the eye, basically, to see if that might bring people in. We've seen them go through many different things. Let's throw Demetrius Johnson on there. We have a title in play this way. I felt like nothing really stuck. There was never an identity that really placed it in the context of that whole deal. Like, there was nothing that you would think like, well, this is what we expect from a Fox card. There was never an identity in that way. So I didn't feel like it felt a little bit like two separate pieces coming together now and then. It had its benefits, but it never felt like there was continuity to it. You know what I mean? So that would be like the first thing. But I also felt like, and we've talked about this a million times, just the inundation of shows surrounding it. There was always a pay-per-view coming up. There was always these things going on. I think it just takes away after a while. I think the core audience, the ones that I always believed that the core audience were the ones that you're supposed to emanate, you're supposed to all base off of that passion, go off of that passion. That started to wane through time. I didn't feel like the people who were the diehards going into it were the exact same diehards coming out of it. Like, some of those people I felt like fell off. They just weren't paying attention. And that was concerning. Just that there was like an aloof feeling to something like that after a while.
It was also hard for the show to get an identity, to your point. Like, what was the difference between certain fight nights and certain Fox cards?
That's just it.
I think that, look, you need to keep, putting it on Fox, you're trying to get casuals, right? You're trying to amp up the power of the sport. But you really need stars to get casuals. And did we see enough stars? No, and that's hard because
they wanted to turn water into wine too. What folks wanted were stars on Fox.
Yes.
And what UFC wanted was for Fox to make stars.
Well, what's interesting right now is that now that the UFC deal is done on Fox, Fox signs with PBC, the Al Heyman, the boxing league, and they essentially, their model for the start is put stars on Fox in somewhat second-rate matchups, stay busy fights, and then ultimately use that as a commercial to build toward the big fights on Showtime and pay-per-view. So it's interesting that they've gone with that model, where in MMA and UFC specifically, you don't really have stay busy fights. So that's that's where that wasn't as comparable.
All right, last but not least, we do Under the Radar. Time for a story now that maybe kind of slipped by people's imaginations or Twitter feeds or whatever that we just didn't want to let go without making mention of. Chuck, we will start with you. What is Under the Radar this week?
So, I mean, it technically would be under the radar because I don't feel like people are talking about it too much. But I think yesterday was the 3-year anniversary of the Fox show when Nate Diaz wins his fight, and he goes on the
Michael
microphone.
Johnson, right?
Yeah, the Michael Johnson fight in Orlando, and he basically created his millions by making that call out to Conor McGregor. Only reason I bring this up is because I felt it was a seminal moment to this day and like an exhibit of how you get paid in this sport, because he had been going up forever. Even that show, he made a ridiculously low amount,
15,000?
something very small. He took that measure and he got the fights. Obviously, he made a lot of money, but I felt like if you look back at it, you're like, this should be everybody's learning experience about what it means to use that platform and to use that microphone effectively. He was the first guy I saw really, really, truly do that.
Yeah,
so that's
no
my
doubt. And then that time he was like,
yeah. So, well, that was also on
that's
Fox.
when he just imprinted his legend.
Yes.
All right.
What is Under the Radar, Brian?
What was over the radar was this ridiculous Dana White, Oscar De La Hoya beef last week, which First Take and ESPN sort of helped facilitate. Oscar doing the media rounds to promote Canelo Alvarez's first of his own fight. And of course he went off, I'm going to get back into MMA. I'm going to compete against Dana. The takes everyone has are right. The takes meaning, A, stop talking about this. This is the gas station food of this MMA show. And B, why should Dana care? Why would he come back and make this such a thing? And people saying, oh, it's great to see old angry Dana again. I think the under the radar part of this over the radar story is the interview that when Dana White went out of his way to call up Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports and be like, not only is Oscar lying about the whole fighter pay thing, but here's a long laundry list of stats and paydays which we've never before revealed. They never reveal the actual pay-per-view buys. Suddenly he's got pay-per-view numbers. Yeah. He's got purses for Liddell and Ortiz over the history. He's got a lot of really weird stats that we never...
I found Liddell's pay after retirement just to be associated with UFC show.
$400K?
Yeah, I found that to be the most fascinating part of that article.
You got to ask yourself, like, how did we get here? Yeah. Why would Dan... You're almost saying...
It touched a nerve, clearly.
Anyone in MMA looks at Oscar... look... Oscar and Dana arguing it's the Spider-Man meme of two liars just kind of pointing at each other. We get that. But Oscar's a buffoon in the MMA space about this. I think it touched a nerve. I think like anybody in our family or at work who can get us into these arguments where we stop being ourselves and we start screaming, you're like, how did that happen? It's usually because they touch on something that's true. And I think the one thing with Dana White is this whole fighter pay thing and always underserving them is ultimately true, and he knows it. That's why he's so quick to fight about it. But there is a counter argument there. Could UFC be where it is today? Could it have had the Fox deal? Could it have sold for that much money
paid more,
if they actually paid the fighters what they deserve?
Yeah.
Probably not.
But now I'm at the point now where you got more money, and Bellator did too. Bellator and UFC and their new DAZN ESPN deals got more money out of a declining audience. This idea that like the industry at this point is not mature is nonsense. It is so obviously nonsense. So just keep that in mind. For me, under the radar, I will do. I like to do the jiu-jitsu side of things. This past weekend was the No-Gi Worlds. That's an IBJJF tournament. A lot of folks have asked me like, why do you like the IBJJF tournament? Now this was no-gi, so there's not a gi involved. It's all like submission wrestling. And it's not that I don't like EBI or Polaris or something like that, but the reality is if you want the A-class competitors, it's the IBJJF tournaments. That's just, or ADCC, one of the two. And the ADCC is only once every 2 years. That's where you have to go. You have to go to the Mundials. You have to go to the No-Gi Worlds. That's where the very, 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 very best compete. And a guy who came from the EBI circuit, Gordon Ryan, who I thought was very good, but I didn't really know how good he was. Then he had that amazing run at ADCC. Okay, at the No-Gi Worlds, he ran through everybody. In his first match, he won 47-0 before the guy just surrendered an armbar, shocking everyone. Remember at Quintet, he butterfly swept Josh Barnett, mounted triangle, and then finished him quickly. And I was like, oh my God, how good is he? Yuri Samois won one match against him or I should say, Gordon beat him by just an advantage, but in another one he beat him 11-0. He won his weight division ultra heavy, and he won the absolute, and he did it in such fashion. Remember the Brendan Schaub Cyborg Abreu match from Metamoris, where Schaub took some heat for not really engaging? How about Cyborg got disqualified for basically the exact same thing, including but not limited to slapping Gordon Ryan out of frustration because he could do nothing. Wow, the tables turned on that one. Gordon Ryan, it is amazing to see him come along and to see an American this good at jiu-jitsu look out, and he is still young. Those guys over at the DDS, the Danaher Death Squad, they did something right with him. He looks phenomenal. So congrats to him.
Are we going to get a chance to talk Bellator Hawaii at all? Because I wanted to bring up one thing to you.
Very quickly, what?
Because that Ed Ruth Neiman Gracie fight in the welterweight tournament was so fun to watch. The grappling versus wrestling. To me, it just screamed Luke Thomas sex across my screen. You must have been loving that.
The kind of sex that I like does not look like that.
I mean, that was fun. That was some technical inside baseball fun.
It is. I've got some different thoughts. We'll have to save it for a different time. But we're not done. We have taken your tweets using the hashtag #TheMMAHour. And now we're going to have a segment called After the Beat where we're going to answer them. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked. After the Beat starts right now. All right, we're back. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell from CBS Sports, and then Chuck Mindenhall, the Ringer, and MMA Fighting. We are here for After the Beat. We have taken your questions, comments, bitches, grabs, and smartass remarks using the hashtag #TheMMAHour. Boys, we have one extra. We usually do a set amount. I added one on here just to make your lives miserable. So let's get right to it. First one is what? All right there, Chuck. Fighter with the biggest need of a tune-up fight in 2019.
Oof. Let's see here.
Now, understand what it means to need a tune-up fight. Everybody needs a tune-up fight.
Of course.
Best fighters need a tune-up fight. When you say someone needs a tune-up fight, you're not saying that they're bad. You're saying that we need to figure things out.
Can we presume, if we presume that Dominick Cruz can make it back, I would say he would need a tune-up fight, just given the amount of time. But honestly, man, a guy like Nate Diaz as well, who's now been out for a long time, I wouldn't mind seeing him have a tune-up fight. And also just to gauge, I think, to see where his star power is at this point. It could go against anybody. I don't think that Dustin Poirier necessarily was going to raise the bar more than somebody else saw. Maybe one of those guys.
It's Conor McGregor all day and all night.
Yeah.
You need it for confidence purposes for him. You need it for confidence in the buying public purposes as well. And certainly you'd get a big payday out of it. I mean, imagine if you could put him in there with Jeremy Stephens and just be like...
Well, Stephens is going to fight
I know he's got an actual fight, but I'm saying, imagine if you just book that and you're like, who cares about the weight? They got that history. We'll run that promo.
He does need some confidence.
And then Conor would probably knock him out. Or an Aldo trilogy, which doesn't sound like a tune-up fight, but, could be. I just think that, yes, stars that are coming off of rough losses could always use a little bump back up.
I would say a sort of a one that maybe folks might not think of is I think Cub Swanson could probably use one. He's had a rough run, but he's not fighting chumps either, so it's kind of just tough.
Brian Ortega's left eye.
Brian Ortega. And everyone's like, oh my God, look how fast he healed. It's like, right, that was his first real beating that he ever took. What you don't want to do is then put him right back into it.
We've seen it a million times.
And so Dan Hooker would be another one. I'd be like, tune-up maybe is a strong word, but I don't know that I would put him up against some voracious or ferocious puncher. I think that would be probably a mistake. But something along those lines. Any female fighters that stand out that could use one?
Man, well, Joanna's already kind of rectified her situation, and now she's back to it. So maybe I wouldn't mind seeing her kind of regain her footing a little bit, against somebody who she's supposed to beat, because she's been going through the game. I'm trying to think, though. I feel like I'm missing somebody because Rousey's no longer there. But if Rousey comes back, I would say she needs a tune-up fight.
Yeah.
You'll see it at the Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Okay, next. Let's see, boys. What are your guys' thoughts on raising the rest period between rounds? We've seen gassed fighters butcher otherwise good fights, and you've spoken previously about the danger of 5-round fights. If the fighters had more rest, would they be safer, or would safer fights ensue? What do you think about that?
I think that's a good idea.
To what, 1.5 minutes?
I'd say go 2 minutes. Is it really that hard? You can run. I feel like there's never actually.
It would massively extend your broadcast.
But I feel like there's never enough time between the rounds to properly get the replays out and hear something credible in both corners that can be applied toward the analysis of the fight. And if you're making the boxing comparison of 3-minute rounds with a minute break in between, in MMA you're going 5 minutes with a minute. Yeah, can we go 90 seconds at the very least? It seems to make sense.
I think you should do, for 3-round fights, just 1 minute, because you only have 2 rest periods. But if your fight goes to championship rounds, between 3rd and 4th and 4th and 5th, you get 90 seconds.
That's what I was,
I like that.
I can see that.
You've added 1 more minute in total as a consequence.
You don't want 5 minutes with an interview and a massage?
No. And also, just as a side note, when in the middle of a fight, IFL did this once, and I think LFA does it sometimes, where they'll be interviewing a coach in the middle of the fight, and he'll be trying to be no, circle left, no!
Head movement.
Right in the middle of the thing. It's
what were we saying?
Can we not do that anymore, please?
Yeah. No, I'm all for what you just said. I do think that the 5-minute rounds, I've thought about that a little bit. The 5-minute rounds, and especially after the second round, like maybe they do a longer one on the last round if you make it to the third. But I agree with you. I would like to see if they're going to go beyond that, because that's such a taxation on yourself, like to go, you know what I mean? Like 3 rounds even, but to go to the 4th round and go to the 5th round in those fights, it seems almost humane to do that. Because there's a lot of, it's not just catching your breath. I mean, it's getting your bearings in general, because a lot of times the coaches are just trying to communicate something, and I'm not sure they can in a minute sometimes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but I think a 90-second, I've thought about that before. Like, people have mentioned this, but I'm like, I feel like it has to be something more like that, where it's in the championship round.
Also, just think about the other day. I mean, we sort of like say it now as a footnote of history, but I remember when, of course, this was a Pride staple. All the first rounds were 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
You begin to think about that. That is
crazy, man.
Only the Japanese who have game shows based on shame and humiliation would think of fighting. Be like, what? How can we add this to an inhumane? Oh, I know, 10-minute first rounds. And then again, it was only 1 minute between them. I still believe. I don't think it was any longer than that. So God, they
no drug testing either.
Well, if you're going to ask them to fight 10-minute first rounds, you can't ask them to not.
You got to let
drugs.
them do what they want.
Okay, I feel like it works. Next. This question is specifically for Chuck. What is your favorite animal?
Wow.
My favorite animal.
I saw this one and I go, yep.
I like dogs. If we're talking about like more, I've always liked llamas. I was going to wear my Christmas
Why do you
sweater that
like
has a llama.
llamas of all things?
It's cute, right? Like the big doughy eyes with lashes and all that.
They look stupid.
They do.
Spit.
Animals
spit.
except for giraffes, animals with really long necks look dumb.
Yeah.
You ever seen a llama spit at like a petting zoo?
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's bad. They're nasty. Yeah.
They are nasty.
But their coats are, they make good sweaters.
They do.
Yep.
The Peruvians are really all in on that.
Those are the alpaca, but
Well, okay, aren't they similar?
they're similar.
Yeah. I'm a big cat guy. Not that you asked me my favorite animal, but I just want to let it be known that I have a screensaver of a picture of my late cat who died 2 days ago on my phone, and Luke heckled me very nicely, calling me essentially a P word.
I did not know that your cat passed away, which, first of all, as a cat owner, I'm very sorry to hear this. And had I known, I would not have said anything. I was just trying to be mean in a way that was inoffensive. Why can't I do that?
Just backfired.
If you go to you boys both have kids, right?
Yes.
If you go to the zoo, what animals do your kids like?
The large cats, so
Yeah,
meaning
that's true.
lynx is a
Yes.
good one. Any kind of panther, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Same thing.
Bro, I've always been attracted to the primate house, which should make a lot of sense, actually. You go into the
feces.
Yeah, it's just bored gorillas, hurling their, defecation at you. It's,
Sounds like one of those metal shows you go to.
really, you know what? There's not much of a difference. There really isn't. I always loved apes, any kind of primate. Really.
What was the last concert you went to?
The last concert I went to?
POD?
No, it was Dying Fetus, actually. That's
right.
Dying Fetus Incantation.
Fetus.
I saw them at the Gramercy Theater.
You had a T-shirt.
I did. I wore the hoodie on Monday's MMA Hour.
Yeah, that's why.
right.
There you go.
I always feel weird wearing it because it's a knife, and then the bottom of it says "Destroy all threats," and do people think I'm like either racist or Antifa? I can't tell which one they think I am. So I'm always like holding doors like a really long, like, come on through, nice lady. Just so people don't think I'm too weird. But it's like, I just like a band. I don't know.
It's their logo.
You like the weird things that I like. Seriously, last night before I went to bed, I watched all of Cannibal Corpse's set at Bloodstock.
Yeah.
It was good. It was really good.
Wow.
What? You never seen
Bloodstock?
Yeah.
It's called Bloodstock?
You never heard of Bloodstock?
No.
It's like a metal festival, yeah.
Good Lord.
It's good. It's a good show.
Check it out sometime.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't go to the Jonas Brothers shows
Oh,
or
how
whatever
dare
it is
you,
that
how
you
dare
do
you.
with your cats. Next. Sorry, rest in peace, cat. All right. With UFC's continued expansion, Ryzen landing Floyd. I picked this question for a second now. Hang on. Combate gaining a foothold. There's something to be said for that. One in mainland China. Not much to be said for that. And Euro leagues producing talent consistently. Is this the strongest the international MMA scene has ever been? This seems like a bit of a silly question given how it started, but it is not. It's actually a very good one.
And not to mention KSW in Poland, who's
Correct.
like going, those shows are like
Correct.
huge.
Yep.
Strongest on volume, but is it the strongest on impact? It's not Pride. This ain't Pride, bro.
Right. I think that's right. I mean, we're in a point now in MMA where back when you had these other powerhouses, MMA just didn't look like this. So it is more international. There is more volume of it. And so that's something. But like, put the question out one more time if you can. I want to sort of piece this together here a little bit. He said that Floyd or Ryzen, we can't put it back up?
Landed Floyd.
All right, well, whatever. I mean, I don't know how well that's the word with that. Okay, there we go. With Ryzen did not land Floyd. Ryzen is using Floyd to con everybody. Yeah. So that's one. Combate, by the way, Combate's ratings on Univision and whatever somewhere else, they beat Bellator's ratings pretty close.
Really?
Yeah. One in mainland China. One did raise, and it should be noted, they have raised overall about $250 million and most recently about $166 million. And that is phenomenal. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. No one makes bolder claims without ever backing them up with any real evidence than one. So I would be very hesitant to...
I thought you were going to say me. That was good.
Well, yours are just straight up nonsense. Theirs at least might be true. We actually don't know. Like the weight cutting thing, they won't let you talk to any of their doctors. The television thing, Nielsen straight up contradicts them. So there's all these kinds of reasons to be like, I don't know if it's not true, but we don't have nearly enough evidence. So the point being is they did sign some big names. They're going to have DJ and Eddie, I guess, in March.
Yep, in Japan.
So they're going to do...
the TV deal.
You mean the streaming deal?
Yeah, TV-ish, right?
I said this before. It's like the funny thing about that deal was, if you thought about it, they were just for us here in North America. They were giving away their stuff for free on their app. Now they're going to get paid for by Turner Sports. If you had just presented it that way, you're like, wow, that's a great deal. Good for them, you know? How much visibility is there? I don't know, but how much visibility was there before? Right. At least you're getting paid for it now. But they set it up like, we got this major North American TV deal. No, you didn't. Yeah. No, you didn't. You got a great streaming deal to complement your business in Asia. We'll see where it goes.
There's a couple of TV. It's what they're putting on.
They put on
tape-delayed recap shows, right?
Once a month, and we don't know what time, and we don't know how it's going to be presented.
True.
To call that a major television, that's not nothing. It's not. It's on TNT, which is a big channel. It's not nothing. It's not a major deal. I'm sorry, it's not.
I was just going to say, as far as the global thing, I think it is. Like, thinking about it, I think it's probably more global now, and there's probably more more markets of it. Like, you even just talking to Australian fighters, you have a champion, you have Adesanya who's coming up, it could be, but you have, just talking to guys like Dan Kelly, down there who runs a school, and they're talking about, who was the other guy, George Soteropoulos,
yes,
who opened a school. These guys are opening schools, and they're saying they're popping up all over because it's finally down there in terms of a real wave now. So there are local promotions going on down there that are doing really well, and then, Bellator snapping up all the British and Irish guys and all that stuff. I feel like, just thinking about the question, I'm like, I think it probably is more. It's just that the UFC is what it is now. So we look at that as the big league, and then everything is kind of periphery. But if you look at that periphery, I think that's probably true.
The only issue is that MMA has just gone through fundamental transformations rather than various reshapings. It's been these epic changes as it will go from nothing to something.
Right.
So it's just hard to compare eras. And to the point, look, one does do good work in Asia. Ryzen we'll see how long they can hang on, but they're doing interesting work. And Europe appears to be a powerhouse in ways it didn't before. It's just no one is Pride. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
No one is even really Dream, to be quite honest with you. So they got a long way to go.
But back then, I mean, they could be those things. These days, It's like, I don't think that's even possible.
Right.
I mean, I'd be surprised if they could do that again.
And there's a debate about, like, is the UFC letting go of its consolidation on purpose, or is it just a natural way that the business is flowing? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is good to see that there's, Bellator can go to Hawaii and that there's international MMA. So this is the best international scene I could say has been in a while. I don't know if it's the best ever.
Right.
Next. What is the worst holiday food, Brian? The correct answer is pumpkin pie, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Pumpkin? No. Fruitcake is the worst.
Fruitcake is bad.
Fruitcake is just...
It just gets a bad.
Who the
it's
hell...
actually pretty good.
What?
Pretty good. Well, the fruitcake I have is pretty good.
Do you consider marijuana fruit?
We're not talking about the same thing then?
Rum cake's pretty bad too. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Who gets off on that?
Are you high? Rum cake is the best.
Figgy pudding.
I don't even know what figgy pudding is.
I don't either. That's just in a song.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fig flavored pudding.
Never had that.
Figs are.
I can't pronounce anything today. I can't tell if it's Fedor Bader or
Spotted
Fader
dick,
Bader.
I've had that, and that's
Spotted dick.
that's not very good.
Yeah.
British folks like it.
Where are we going? Where are we going right now?
That's an
Yeah, you're like
actual-
either-
that's a
Yeah, you're
seasonal-
like served at dinner or in the back alley of a gas station.
God.
Let me think.
You said holidays. That's just
Pumpkin
everyday
pie is
stuff.
fantastic.
Yeah, pumpkin pie is awesome. by the
Turnips
way.
really gross. I don't know why people get in on that.
No, you know what's gross at Thanksgiving are people who get the canned cranberry
Wrong.
jelly.
It's
like you
agree.
guys-
I don't
canned
like that
all day. Canned. Not. Do you want the berries in it? No.
You
Get outta
guys,
here.
you guys need help, dude. That's like being like, I love black licorice, dude.
No,
good.
black
Black
licorice
licorice is good.
No, it's kryptonite.
What?
It's
Oh,
poison.
yeah.
It's poison. You don't want that. You don't want that.
No. Wait. Well, so what are the holidays? Easter. What do they eat at Easter? Just candies.
Ham.
Peeps.
Ham on Easter, bro. Ham.
Ham is. I'm not Christian, so I don't
Candy
know.
ham. Yeah, come on.
All right. So what are some other holidays? 4th of July is beer.
Yeah,
Hot dogs all day.
That's fine. Burgers and stuff. So it's Christmas. What
Christmas is beer.
Christmas is eggnog. Eggnog is amazing.
Oh yeah.
I love eggnog.
Christmas Eve for me is a big Chinese thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You just go old school. What's the movie? You'll shoot your
Christmas
eye out.
Story, yeah.
Christmas Story. Where they just order from the Chinese place. I'm trying to think. Is anything? What are any other major holidays we're not thinking of? Joe, anything else we're not thinking of? Any other major holiday?
Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah,
Halloween.
I don't
Kwanzaa,
know what they eat those things.
matzos,
No, we're talking like national holidays. Let's think of
International Fight Week.
President's Day.
Veterans Day. Yeah, no. Once it gets
Bowl
to summer,
Sunday.
once it
I know.
gets summer. Oh yeah.
Labor Day.
Okay, how about this one? Super Bowl party. You're not hosting. You're attending. You have to bring. What do you bring? Our European listeners won't understand that.
Buffalo chicken dip is
that's
next
insane.
level. Yeah.
I've never had that.
Oh my God! I have not only had it.
You have
I
to
once.
shred the chicken?
I basically squat over the dip bowl so no one else can get in on that because you just got
is really good.
you can't leave the bowl. It's,
Now, what kind of chip? You have to have a corn chip because
you gotta have a hard
it's gotta
chip with some
heft to it,
texture. Yeah, you gotta have some heft. Like, I mean, you have to risk being that guy who's just not gonna leave the bowl. Like, you're just gonna be that guy. And once you're okay with that and you go all in, you can just really consume that.
What do you think?
That's accurate, actually. That's what we brought before.
Really?
Yeah.
I usually go for the combo. I go for the combo where I'll bring 12-pack of good beer.
Yeah.
So, something local. And then I usually do like a 7-layer dip. Or, so every nation makes them different, but in Colombia, empanadas are small. They're like this, and it's a corn shell that you fry with ground beef in the middle.
I'm all about that.
And then they make something called ají, which is like a vinegary sauce. So you've got the hard potato-ish shell, corn shell, with the acid of the vinegar, and then you bring the beer. It's finger
works.
food. You can only have a couple. Like it works out
You're going to
pretty
do
well.
that this Super Bowl, or are you going to be busy?
This Super Bowl, what am I going to do? I don't even care anymore.
You don't
By the
care?
way, baked beans with bacon and pineapple is a life changer.
Dude, you need help. You have the palate of a
Pineapple.
toddler. You're like cigarette butts and banana peels are truly a delicacy.
That's the way I was raised. All right.
Well, I love eating these baked beans in gallbladder sauce.
Dear placenta.
All right, next. If Dana White were visited by 3 ghosts this holiday season, so each one gets to pick a ghost here, what lesson do you think they want him to learn before moving forward in 2019, boys?
Oh, man.
So this is from Ebenezer Scrooge, and he got visited by the
first,
3
Brian.
ghosts.
How about don't give Luke Thomas a credential? Is that how this ends?
I mean, we're probably hurtling towards that inexorably anyway, but okay, pick a ghost. The ghost of...
Go ahead.
Oh my God, you guys are so unimaginative.
You go first.
All right, I would say
There's 3 of us.
The ghost, I would pick the ghost that was it Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost
Yes.
of Christmas
Present.
Future, right? So I can't know about his past too much. You know what? Where he got the snow. Well, I don't want to get into that. I just don't want to touch that.
Snow.
Yeah, I don't even want to touch that.
Snow and former? Where are
I
we
would
going?
say the ghost of I'm going to make up something. The ghost of Christmas Present should say, let the Diaz brothers go. Give a gift to the fans. You guys all hate each other. Just move on. So there you go.
Man,
What lesson does he need to learn?
that is so tough.
There's another
Like,
one
what
about
kind of
media.
genre are we talking
about
about?
media. Like re-credential Josh Grove. Let him back in.
Yeah.
That'd be a
John Snowden, let him back in.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a good one.
That's a gross of Christmas past. Yeah. Go back and
That would be. Actually, that'd
Yeah.
be a good one. Because that is one of the egregious things that has happened and
Yes.
continues to be there. So I'll go with that one.
All right, and then you?
I got to do the future, right?
Yeah, you got to do the future.
Ghost of Christmas Future. I mean, we kind of nailed a lot of the things that are bothersome with the sport, but
All right, I picked the Diaz's. The other one is the credentials. We got to pick one more.
Get Max Holloway to Hawaii. You got to get him there.
That's a big one.
that is a big one. Yeah. Yeah. Can we make? I got a really creative matchup for you. Conor McGregor and Anderson Silva.
Oh yes, at 180.
I hope your train derails on the way home. All right, next.
Is there more?
Yeah. Oh, sorry to keep you busy. You can
After
only.
that one.
How about this one? You got some dumb questions today. You can only eat 3 cuisines for the rest of your life. What are they? I do these to you now because you boys just ruggle with them.
Italian #1.
Easy call. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Thai.
Ooh, that's a bit of a left field call.
Well, it's Asian, but it feels really good. Obviously, real Asian food doesn't make you hurt like American Chinese food does.
Right.
But even in the American realm of eating Asian-inspired foods, Thai tastes amazing, and it just feels really good.
I do like Thai food. And then third,
Lebanese.
so Mediterranean.
Mexican, you gotta, yeah, but like authentic Mexican, or you can go into
Mexican.
you can go
Mexican
into
would
your
be
other
good, too.
Spanish countries with that too.
I'd have Mexican in front of the Thai, but I do love Thai food.
Yeah,
You
I
know-
would go Mediterranean. I would go probably Mexican, and then Italian.
You know what has changed in my life in the last year?
Well,
And I'm
Italian's
gonna-
Mediterranean too.
I'm going to hit it at Grand Central Station on the way home. I had just never had Mexican corn, street corn in my entire life.
Oh, elote.
Oh my God, dude,
Have
that
you ever had
is.
elote?
It is like.
I was with him last time. He had.
They
It
grill.
is-
They grill it. They dip butter in it, and then the cotija cheese all
Oh,
over
it's
it.
got the spices
and then
on
the
it.
crema.
That's
Oh, yeah.
one of the things that in public,
Yeah.
I'm just making love to it. I do not care. You know, like there's those people in public who are just make
can
out.
imagine.
Look, it's like third base in public. They don't even care. That's me and the elote, and on the train, just covered in it. Just
Yeah, it's amazing. Elote is truly special. That is a good
What a
street
good
food.
visual.
oh, so good.
What was the last thing you ate for street food?
I mean, I've had Mexican food multiple times. Like if you go to breweries and things like that, they
Yeah.
a lot of times have
Carts outside?
Yeah, exactly. So it's been Mexican the last couple of times.
I'm trying to think. The last thing I had was in. I almost never eat ham because of just the ethical concerns around it. If I get it from a farm where they're ethically raised, I don't mind, but that's pretty rare. But then when I was in Spain for vacation, it's impossible to avoid ham. I mean, it's everywhere. And this guy was selling little cones, and in the cone was just ham and cheese cubes, and it was €1, and it was like
Inside like a cake cone.
like have you ever had those cones for like slushies?
Yes.
Like a paper cone almost.
Oh, so it's not edible. All right. So
No,
you just-
no. The cone was just like a container. It wasn't like you could eat it later, unless you were Billy Goat, I suppose. and the ham in Spain is like nothing even. There's not even a close second. Like it's. I remember I went there. You know, you hear in America you can buy like the deli ham, which I don't ever touch, and it's like slices or whatever. And then you can go to like, the fancy stuff, the prosciutto. Bro, that's what they call ham.
Right.
Like they're like our prosciutto, this is fancy. That's just their regular sliced ham there. And then they have levels above that. It's just nuts.
Man.
Anything else? One more? Let's see it. All right, this was an interesting one, I thought. Joe Rogan was brought up. I'm not sure who brought him up, but so was the Death of Expertise. What do you make of the JRE, that's his podcast, in terms of its ethos and net benefits to society? I think that's asking a bigger question than it deserves, but I'm not trying to be a dick. It's a hugely successful podcast, but it's not the King James Bible. He is regarded by fans as an authority figure, and his fringe guests are pooled with his credible guests. It's weird, right? Because he did the right thing, I thought. He separated out his guests on the MMA and combat sports side from his various other intellectual pursuits, which made a lot of sense. He's had some guests that I thought were some really disreputable characters, but he's had a lot of them I thought were amazing. And his whole point is, I'm just trying to talk to a wide variety of people. It's worked out really well for him. It's made him even bigger of a celebrity than he
I
already
can't believe how
was.
big of a celebrity.
It's just like now people don't even want the $50,000. They just want to get on his podcast.
I mean, how many people have viewed the
I know.
Elon Musk?
I was
interview?
pointing that out actually. There are more people asking to be on his podcast now than hey, pay me Dana the 50,000. I pointed this out last time, and I had a lot of people basically saying they'd recognize that, but.
I mean, that Elon Musk interview was like, I mean, how many hits? I mean, it was like,
I know.
it was absurd. It was like a
There's a
cultural
lot of
event.
them these days. I mean, there's people that I know who really only know the UFC through Joe Rogan. I mean, there are a lot of people like that who just know Joe Rogan. They're my buddies in Colorado who live out there for a reason that you appreciate.
You mean Jeff Wagenheim?
Like the Jeff Wagenheims, but in Colorado. But but they know Joe Rogan. They watch his podcast religiously, and but they know the UFC as an extension of that, So it's huge.
I think it's really important. He allows crazy people to come on there and say some crazy things that I believe.
Alex Jones has been on there, for example. It's like, not sure how much I want to hear from him. The only thing that really gets me is I have nothing against Jordan Peterson. I have nothing for him. I have nothing against him. I'm totally neutral about his work, in large part because I've just not paid much attention to it. But I mean, it's if you've missed something and then it gets crazy polarized, where either people love him or people hate him or something, I never know what to make of it, so I just leave it aside. It's the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's like, y'all figure it out. I don't know. It's not. I'm not here to legislate that. However, because I guess he's on a show all the time, and all the stuff's on YouTube. I can't open up YouTube without like, here's this fight you missed that the UFC released on their YouTube channel. Here's someone's breakdown. Here's Michael Bisping's latest podcast. Here's a Jordan Peterson lecture on gender, blah 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 in Canada. And I'm like, I didn't ask for this. Like, it's constant, a constant. I have to kind of weed that out a little bit. It's a little bit funny. I don't know how I feel about it. It's a super successful podcast, but the truth is, they're so long, I rarely ever get a chance to listen to them, right? And here's one thing I'll say about this, too. People, they always ask me, did you hear the recent Rogan podcast? And then they'll ask about other ones, co-main event or whatever. Can I be honest about this? I basically listen to nobody else's podcast, but it's not because I'm like, well, I don't listen to that. It's not that. You know what I found out was happening to me? There was a while there I was listening to all that shit, and then I found out unintentionally I would just start aping their opinions, and it wouldn't even be on purpose.
Which is funny because we're sitting there talking about Joe Rogan, and this is one of the things about listening to commentary and fueling what you think you're seeing in a fight. Because he feeds your subconscious something, and all of a sudden you're presenting as your own observation. You know what I mean?
Yes. So I had to stop listening to people's stuff. I'll occasionally go and sniff out a segment or something small, but I can't in good faith come on here with my own ideas, right or wrong. If I'm listening to everybody else's, they just bleed into mine, and so
death metal is the choice then, abortion metal, and just
okay, it's not abortion metal, for crying out loud. It's not Roe v. Wade metal. It's death metal, and you will appreciate that, young man. Mm-hmm. Yes, you certainly will.
I think I'm older than you, but that's fine.
How old are you?
I'm a man. Come after me. I'm 40.
I'm 39.
You need to get out to Bloodstock, man.
Yeah.
You're gonna like that.
You guys
gotta get you out.
What shows are you going to that are so respectable? Mumford and Losers?
No.
Mumford and Cucks? You two going to?
No, we go to dad rock stuff. Come on.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it. You guys are out there going to Jimmy.
I've been to plenty of death metal shows.
You guys are out there hitting the bong in the parking lot of Jimmy Buffett concerts.
No. I will never get to that level where, because there's regular humans that are so acceptable in society until they go to a Jimmy Buffett concert, and then they just like I'm talking about 55-year-old strong contributors to society, and then they go to a Jimmy Buffett concert and just get nude. It's just I don't know.
Hold on, here's the saddest thing I ever did. You guys ever seen the last? We got to go. But the Drive-By Truckers, it's actually a really good band.
One of my favorites. Yeah,
I love Drive-By Truckers. So I saw them when they were still coming up, before they were headlining their own shows, and they opened for the Allman Brothers, who I also kind of like a little bit, except whoa. You ever seen Allman Brothers fans?
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, the mutants who were walking into this place. God, we were in the parking lot, and I was like, wow, I didn't know Garbage Pail Kids came to life. Huh? Look at that. I mean, we are talking Homo sapiens in the loosest term possible. So
those are my people more than.
Look, if you can't be disparaging about humanity, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the final show.
I didn't know you were a DBT fan, though. I've seen him in 7 different states. I didn't.
Yeah, I like him. And all the iterations through.
We could have hung out long ago.
Yeah. What favorite album? Do you have one?
Oh yeah, the Southern Rock Opera changed my life, but certainly it's the one right after that with the.
They have so many albums I can't.
Dirty
remember.
South.
Dirty South's a good one. Lookout Mountain was the one that got me into him.
Yep.
But they've got so many.
Last concert I saw was Jason Isbell.
Is that right? Yeah, look at that. All right. There you go. And then we're going to go to Bloodstock together.
There it is.
And we can watch the lead singer of Cannibal Corpse. His name is Corpse Grinder. So there you go. All right. So that's the last show in this studio for this year. It has been a wonderful home for us. It's been a bit of a transition year for MMA fighting, but we have steadied the course. We have stayed in the pocket. We have thrown downfield, and you have been there to catch our receiving balls. That sounds weird. But you know what I'm trying to say. We appreciate you guys and all your patronage. So Christmas is next week, but MMA Fighting will be in Las Vegas. We've got tons of coverage coming your way. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. And yeah, that is Chuck. That is Brian. I am Luke. Feliz Navidad. Until next time, hands up, chin down, let them fly. This is the MMA Beat.